Welcome to Buckets. This is Action Network's basketball betting podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Maria Marino, back once again with a favorite here on Buckets, Action Network writer Jim Turvey. Jim, what's going on?
Not too much. Just enjoying a good Thursday of basketball, and now we're rolling into a weekend. We're coming down to the witching hour here. Season's right around the end. We're gonna get playoffs soon. I'm just excited to get some real big time basketball here.
Absolutely. This is really the home stretch of the season. I can't believe it's already Friday the 25th. There's only one game on the slate today. We're going to get into that. We'll preview the weekend a little bit, but I did want to just react to Thursday because we had a pretty wild slate last night. And in particular, a really wild game between Connecticut and New York that, frankly, New York shouldn't have won. And I shouldn't say that because you got to give credit where it's due when you come back from down 20 points. But the game was super winnable for Connecticut. And it just came down to like a couple of kind of crazy plays. And it just shows you got to kind of keep your guard up. Libs end up forcing overtime and end up stealing a win over the Connecticut Sun.
Yeah, honestly, we're both Liberty fans. We've admitted it here, but I was actually honestly I was rooting for the Sun to hold on at the end there because I had the under for the game, so that obviously it was going to be an under until if Sabrina makes that free throw, we gotten both. But I also have those Sun future win totals. Liberty are clear of the Sun, I think. I guess if they lost 2 to them, it might start to get interesting for that second seed. But a small part of me, this is why betting is great and also the worst. I was rooting against my own team because my bets were aligned in an opposite direction. So it's funny how that works sometimes.
Right. So I was a little out of it last night, and I looked to potentially place a bet a little too close to tip. And I was like hemming and hawing on, I think Stewie's points total was around 20 and a half or 21 and a half. And I was thinking about it, but I didn't get it in time. And then the game's going on, and she got into some foul trouble, was in and out of the game, and wasn't really making much of an impact. And I'm like, oh, wow, I guess probably a good thing I didn't bet that. But then, this is kind of what happened. And this kind of brings me to a point I want to make quickly about the MVP conversation is, regardless of what happened in the first 3 quarters of the game, Stewie comes in and closes. And I think, so long story short, she ends up, I think she had over 20. But she, I think, made a statement in terms of that MVP conversation because we had a little video propaganda this week drop about Alyssa Thomas. And I've been a fan of Alyssa Thomas. I even put in a bet on her to win MVP because I think she's a very strong candidate. But, in that situation for the Liberty, their MVP came in and really closed out the game. So just a thought on that.
Well, and did you see the latest is that the two have flipped in the betting market? So Asia Wilson is now, after her record-tying 53 points, she is now a slight favorite over Stewie. So that's something to definitely keep an eye on down the stretch here. That's going to be really tight. And I know a lot of people are on one side or the other of that. Some people have tried to hedge out and, grab good numbers for both. But it's definitely something to watch in these final couple of weeks here.
Yeah, that's super interesting because it seems like something will keep happening where they one up each other. So it's for something that it's not a runaway for anybody. It's something that the last few weeks of the season it's going to matter. But speaking of the last few weeks of the season, so after the top 3 seeds, which are Vegas, New York, and Connecticut, we pretty much have a free-for-all in the standings. Like the Dallas Wings at times have shown flashes of being great, but they've still kind of hovered around that. Like they're not really pulling away from the pack. And really everybody else is in kind of the same boat. And that includes the Dream and the Sparks, who are playing tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern on Ion. So the Sparks, don't look now, they've won 5 in a row. Did not see that coming earlier in the season because they are in playoff position right now. They are 8th in the standings. The Dream have struggled a bit. They've lost 4 of 5. They are currently at 6. But like I said, really anyone from that 4th spot through the 8th spot, and even the 9th spot with Chicago, they're all within a couple of games. So pretty much anything can happen. Any thoughts on the game tonight?
Yeah, this is quietly kind of a huge game for seeding. If you had looked about even 2-3 weeks ago at these two teams, you have been like, all right, Atlanta are kind of, in that 4 or 5 seed. Sparks will be lucky again in the playoff. If they win this game on Friday, the Sparks, they'll be tied in the loss column with the Dream, which is kind of crazy to think about. I am going to be leaning towards the Sparks side. Now, one thing I'll say, I was going to do it in a little bit of our catch up, but it actually plays into this game as well. You'll notice if you follow me in the app, or if you follow even some of the other bettors who are betting the W, the season has gotten sharper as it goes along. The lines have gotten sharper. It's just how every sport works, right? Especially the ones where bettors can have an information edge. The further we get into the season, the books now have that information. They have past games to work off of. You see some of the wonkiness come in this time of the season. So if you notice me, I'm putting in fewer bets. I'm putting in smaller units because we did so well at the start of the season. We don't want to give it all back now.
Right.
That's something I've learned in the past is that the beginning of the season, that's the time you hammer spots. Mm-hmm. End of the season, we still want to be watching. We still want to have, some action on the game, but maybe it's fewer bets and maybe it's smaller units. So I do lean towards both the Sparks and the Dream team total under because this Dream offense is one that has been absolutely terrible for the past month. They have by far the worst offensive net rating since the All-Star break. And on the flip side of that coin, the Sparks have the best defensive rating since the All-Star break. So it seems like a perfect spot, right? But guess what happened last game? The Dream scored 100 against the Aces. Now, the Aces defense has been a little bit questionable here and there, but that's still a top defense that they have scored 100 points against. And like to the point of, crazy things happening this time of the season, and the books are just a little bit sharper. They're not giving you as big edges. This line was about where I had it. I had it a little bit further towards the Sparks, so I do lean that direction. Just because they've been playing so well recently. I think one of the biggest factors for them has been Laisha Clarendon. Getting them back, their stats on the surface, it's like 9 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. But if you look through their career, every single season, basically, they're a plus when they're on the court. They're one of the best, kind of on-off court advanced stats darlings out there. And their impact has been huge. They came back in the midst of what was an 8-game losing streak for the Sparks. And now they're riding a 5-game win streak. It is not a coincidence that Laisha came back and the Sparks are doing really well. Kurt Miller has, some more players to plug into rotation spots here and there. Azrae Stevens being back has been big as well. I don't think the Sparks team is really going to, put any fear into a Liberty or an Aces come first round playoffs. But I do think this is a team that is going to finish in a playoff spot. And even, if this game doesn't go their way, they're still in a decent spot with a 3-game lead in the loss column over the Sky. So I lean Sparks here, and I lean towards the Dream team total under for Friday.
Okay, good to know. I'm glad you brought up Laisha because this time last year, they were out of the league, kind of a victim of some of the, roster salary cap squeezing. And I actually had a chance to speak to Laisha at an event, wrote a little article about this, and they literally said, quote, like, I want to get back and like, I still have some fight in me and I want to like, just get back and throw some punches, like something like that. And I see that happening and, Laisha being a difference maker on this team. So super exciting. And, I think it was a matter of time before Kurt was going to figure some things out and have everybody gelling. So very, very exciting matchup, very meaningful matchup for both of these teams. And by the way, I did want to point out, you can bet Laisha if you're so inclined to score 15 plus points on FanDuel at plus 340.
Ooh,
now,
okay.
I haven't dug deep into the game log, but I'm just saying it's there. And there's some interesting ones to score 20 plus points, to score 25 plus points, and so on. So
Yeah, that's a fun market to play around with, especially with some players who are maybe a little bit more variant. Someone like a Sophie Cunningham, who now that Diana Taurasi, Brittany Griner are out, Danny Barlavi, we've mentioned their name on this podcast in the past. That's someone who Danny has been all over those escalator props, because when those two players are out, and if Sophie, she's gonna get up her threes, that there's a chance, if say she gets up 10 threes and 6 go in of them that night, you're looking at like a 25-point game where she's only going to average 15, but she has those big variant nights because she is so reliant on threes for her points scored.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a fun thing to take a look at. And as we mentioned, there is only the one game tonight, but did want to touch on the weekend, and two of the teams, well, actually, maybe more. Few of the teams that were in action Thursday night are also playing Saturday. That includes the Aces, who are traveling to play the Mystics. The Liberty are also in Minnesota. I did, I did want to circle back to something, because I realized that in our notes here, you wrote that the Lynx, quote unquote, continue to dunk on me, and the Aces D is sus. So please explain.
Yeah. Trying to sound like the kids out here in my old man age. Yeah, those are two things that definitely have stood out to me lately. The Lynx are the team that I probably have lost the most money on this season. We'll talk about the team that's kind of the inverse of them, but in a little bit. But they just don't have a good net rating, and I know that net rating is not all. You got to like watch the games. I do watch the games, but it is one of these things where they appear to be a team due for regression, and it's probably when you add Cheryl Reeve and Nafisa Collier. Cheryl Reeve being arguably the best coach of all time, Nafisa Collier being a player who maybe is, picking her spots a little bit smarter and better than other players, that I do need to remove myself from that supposed impending regression. But you got to give them credit. They're now 500. They cleared their, with one more win, they'll clear their preseason win total, which was one of my favorite unders, unfortunately. So I'm just staying away from them now. I'm saying no more Lynx bets, because I did bet on them a couple of days ago on when the second game they played the Storm, and of course, wouldn't you know that was the game that they lost. So they're just one of those teams. I'm like, no, hands up, I'm done. I can't do it.
Well,
and then in terms of the Aces, I'll just say real quick, yeah, their defense has looked. That Candace Parker loss looks like it's getting more and more important every day. I think they got some heavy legs maybe as well. They had that Commissioner's Cup game when everyone except for the Liberty and them got like a little bit of a break. They look a little bit tired. I am not worried about them in the long run. I do think we are destined for a Liberty Aces final, but I do think in that final there are questions because of this defense right now that just doesn't look like it did to start the season when Candace Parker was there playing a big role in it, even if her stats weren't, jumping off the page.
Okay, first to the point about the Lynx, I remember on our WNBA season preview episode, we were talking about, team win totals, and I mentioned the Lynx as potentially an over. I did not bet it. I was not confident about it. I was just like, I could see it. And then the season started to unfold. I'm like, well, this ain't happening. Like they're a mess, whatever. And now it's just like blowing my mind that that they are probably going to hit. And then in terms of the Aces, so the one thing that stood out to me the night that the Aces played the Dream and Asia got that tied the record for scoring in a game with 53 points, which is incredible. I'm looking at the final score. I mean, Aces did not cover that game. It was The final score was, I believe, 112-100. Now, I know sometimes, in garbage time, it's not necessarily an accurate, sample of how a defense is, but I just thought to myself, wow, like the Dream still dropped 100, like playing the Aces. And talked about this on Tuesday when Brian Fonseca was on the pod. Like that absence of Candace Parker, it's just like it's her leadership. I think that they're missing. It's a communication thing. It's a calming presence. She's such a high IQ player on both ends. I think she's a key piece of that defense, not only with her size, but just how smart she is. And then offensively, too, she just kind of knows how to make the right play. And to your point, I'm not worried about them long term. But we still don't have a true timetable for her. Is she going to be back for playoffs? I'm not sure. And is she going to be able to get conditioned, get healthy, get integrated, and everything else? So if we do, as you say, we are destined to see, the Liberty and the Aces in the final. Like Candace Parker, I think needs to be a factor for them. Maybe need is a strong word, but I think it would certainly help.
No, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head, especially in terms of, Candace's impact with communication on defense. I think that's, that's what the greatest defensive players, that's a lot of their skill set is, being able to, pick out a play. You see what the other coaches drawn up. You've been in the league just for so long. You start to recognize some of this stuff. Plus Candace is an incredibly smart basketball player. So she probably came in the league knowing those plays and being able to spot them instantly. So yeah, that's a huge factor. So definitely something to keep an eye on. If we got news, would be great. Even just, a loose timeline would be great to see. So,
yeah. But meanwhile, we do have one more regular season meeting between the Liberty and Aces on Monday. I don't want to jump ahead of the weekend, but I am anticipating it. I will be going. So that should be good. But did you want to highlight anything in terms of what you might be looking to bet this weekend?
Yeah, well, it's really nice. So some of the books out there have actually released money lines already for the weekend. So you can kind of get a feel for how the books are going to be making these numbers for the weekend. And a couple things stand out to me, speaking of the Aces and speaking of, us thinking maybe they aren't at their pure peak right now. The Mystics are 11.5-point underdogs to them. Mystics are at home on Saturday and 11.5-point underdogs. Even without EDD, I have this closer to 9.5.
Okay.
I think this Mystics team is starting to get healthy. EDD, please get healthy. We just want to see you on the court. It was such a bummer. I saw, a recent injury report and now it says hip and you're like, there's just so many body parts that can get hurt. And it's like one thing is connected to the other. And if you play on a bad ankle, then your hips gets messed up. So hoping she gets on the court, but even without it, this team is pretty interesting. Shakira Austin, I think, has arguably one of the biggest impacts on over-under totals in the league because they play a lot slower with EDD on the court with Shakira on the court. And she's one of the best defensive players in the league and really essential to the Mystics defense too. So with her back, I'm going to be looking towards unders potentially. Now on Saturday, they play the Aces, who we just talked about, have a terrible defense right now. So maybe not that game, but look for certain spots for Mystics unders as we get down the stretch here. And then on Sunday, there's a couple of home dogs I'll be looking at. The Fever are home dogs to this Dream team. I'm going to be watching Friday. The Dream, like I said, that offense did look like it woke up against the Aces, and they looked a little better against the Aces. I mean, if you're giving the Aces a game, I think they led at the half, or it was a very close game, kind of down the stretch there. So if the Dream look good on Friday, then maybe we call this off. But if they start to slip back to that Dream that we had seen the last couple of weeks, I'm maybe looking at the Fever, maybe even on a money line. There's a plus 300 out there right now. That seems a little bit, long considering those two teams. I don't have them all that far apart. And then the final one, and this is the team that I've kept betting and losing almost the inverse of the Lynx. I keep betting the Lynx to lose. I keep betting the Storm to win because the Storm, since the All-Star break, they have the fourth best net rating in the league. They've looked very good. Their defense has been stout. Now they did lose Gabby Williams and as during that stretch, so they that's a very key player for their team. But they're plus 210 hosting the Sky. The Sky have really kind of crumbled in the second half here, and being able to get plus 210. Maybe I overrate the Storm a little bit. I think even accounting for that, there's a little bit of value there, especially maybe on a spread that would come out, 3-4.5 points, Storm underdog. So those are just the games that caught my eye, but I'm just excited for this stretch run right here.
Super exciting stretch run ahead. Can't wait to see how this all plays out.
And by the way, I'm going to be at the Liberty game on Monday as well. So maybe we can do like a little Buckets live video, get on social or something. So that might have to be a must.
I love that idea. Thinking about the content. All right.
Also friendship, but yes, mostly content.
Yeah, I know. Well, we haven't been to the same game together ever. So sweet. All right. I'm excited for that. Jim Turvey at Turvey Bets on Twitter, on our Action app. Make sure you follow him. You will not regret it. Thanks for joining the show again. It's always good to have you.
Oh, it's always a blast. Thank you so much.
All right. And thanks to everyone out there for listening to Buckets presented by FanDuel. A reminder, download the aforementioned award-winning Action app. Also, if you have a second, rate and review this podcast if you can. And you could win Action swag or a free subscription to Action Pro. Let's get buckets.